I've just been asked to paint a picture of myself in the early days of my career, and it's a difficult thing to do. I think I was just trying to grasp reality, whatever that means, and stop picturing it, but actually grab it, rather than making an idealized object out of a raw material. Take a thing itself and make it mean something. Lancier, this is the foundation of my whole life as an artist. And I'm just so glad to see it here. So in 1977, I went to Ireland and went across to Connemara. And in the granite shore, I found this stomach-shaped lump of rock that had been perfectly formed by the pounding of the waves. And I didn't know what to do with it, but I thought, here is a form that has been created by the elements, that has no human agency in it at all. And I covered this stone in lead and made seams like a seamstress might make. And then I had the stone and the case for the stone. And I realized it was possible, in a way, to separate the appearance of something from its substance. And then it became obvious what I should do, that I should make three cases, but one should contain the stone, one should be empty or be filled with air, and one should be filled with water, and it should be called Lancier. This is air, because it's empty, but you can see this is where I remove the two halves of the mold. This is my version of a Turner landscape. This is the elements. But now the elements have been contained and in a sense protected and made into the seeds of the future. I suppose I was just thinking about, well, what a fragile world we live in. It was in the middle of the Cold War. The most likely end of our species was going to be nuclear Armageddon. But at the same time, I think I was thinking about sculpture and what sculpture could do. I mean, sculpture was about, in a way, recognizing the form of things as much as making the form of things. So this morphological progression that starts with a point, becomes a line, and then develops form, became natural selection, which is an obvious reference to Darwinian theories about evolution. The first 18 objects were quite easy to find the right one to fit in this sequence of forms, but the last few were more and more difficult. They had to be right, they had to be the right size, they had to be the right shape to work. But it was fun. There was something about this evolution of the idea of the found object, which was not about just simply taking things from the real world and isolating them in a vitrine, which is Duchamp's game, but doing something else. That here is the thing as well as the case of the thing. And I like that word case, because that means it is an argument for the thing, an example of the thing, but the particularity of it is there. And obviously the most important two objects are right here. It's the closest to each other in terms of form, shape, are the ones that are the most opposite. So we have a goose egg and a grenade. And I guess that was another of my attempts to deal with reality and collapse dialectics. This was really about the function of lead as this medium that allows matter to become mind, that allows something to be transformed in the mind of the beholder into an imagination of the thing. And that was really a breakthrough for me. And then we have the logical transition to the found object of the body that I find myself living inside. Luckily, there were films made of me in the early days of my career, made by the BBC, and you can see how all of the works in here are made as a single moulding, which means that I had to use my body as my material. And Vic, and my wife, became very, very good at covering me in scrim and plaster, and then I had to be cut out. And it's the absolute antithesis of the primal image that people have of the life of an artist. I became the object but in a very subjective way. These two works were in my first exhibition on Camberwell New Road in 1983. So these all start from a lived moment. They've then taken off and gone around the world and then come back here. Home and the World, for me, is a meditation about sculpture, but also about human nature. The body case is in the form of a captured moment of walking, but of course it isn't walking because the feet are firmly planted on the ground. So it's about the potential of walking. And the head has been replaced by a house. But the house is doing the walking. The house has been extended into this materialization of past, present, and future, trying to reconcile the need on the one hand to roam, the need to always go and find what lies on the other side of the horizon, and the need for a home. It invites you to do the thing that it cannot do, which is to walk around it, to look at the two windows at either end of the house. I just love the fact that there's this kaleidoscope of the repeated light of the window, because there's an aperture at the end, so there's light at the end of the tunnel. But it becomes darker and darker as I bring my eye. The majority of the works in the body part of the show are open. In other words, they have apertures between the outside and the inside. So witness has its ears open. I think for me this work is about the position of the artist, a withdrawn position that is not judging but observing, removed but still in contact. So these holes in the ears are really important. There's this sense that the outside is becoming the inside. Here is the place where the noise of the world is being internalized. I think that is, for me, the example of the artist's life, you could say. It's quite humbling to see this show now, because these works engage with all of the themes that I've continued to explore. And to that degree, you could say, well, you're looking back 40 odd years later and you've already done it now, so what have you been wasting your time doing? But then I don't have any choice. If I knew this then, why did I have to carry on? And that's a question I can't answer.